What would you do if someone looked your child in the eyes and said they didn't belong in your family? Not behind their back, not in private, but right there, in the middle of a room full of relatives. That's exactly what happened the day my parents called everyone to their house. And it didn't happen quietly. It happened while a lawyer was reading a legal document. Let me explain. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. My name is Rossivolt Stone. And 3 months ago, my parents invited the entire family to their house for what they called an important announcement. My sister, Melissa, drove in from 2 states away. My uncle David and Aunt Karen were already there. Even my cousin Ethan showed up, which was surprising because he never attends family gatherings. And sitting beside me on the couch was my 6-year-old son, Noah. He was quietly playing with a toy car on the coffee table. Everything seemed normal. Too normal. But there was one strange detail. At the end of the dining table sat a man none of us knew. A lawyer. His briefcase was open, and in front of him was a thick folder of documents. My mother, Diane Stone, stood behind him with her arms folded. My father, Robert, sat beside her, unusually quiet. Then the lawyer began reading. He explained that the meeting involved a family estate matter. That's when things started to feel strange, because the document he was reading mentioned my son. Several times. Curiosity gap/emotional spike. I remember glancing down at Noah. He looked up at me and whispered, "Dad, why is that man talking about me?" Before I could answer, my mother suddenly looked straight at him. Her expression was cold. And then she said the sentence that froze the entire room. "You're not my real grandchild." Silence. Noah stopped moving. The room went completely still. No one said a word. Not my sister. Not my father. Not even the lawyer. And that's when the lawyer suddenly stopped reading. He looked down at the document again. His eyes widened slightly. Then he slowly lifted his head and said 2 words that changed everything. "Ma'am." But what he said next made my mother's face go pale. When my mother said Noah wasn't her real grandchild, the room didn't explode into arguments. It went silent. The kind of silence where everyone is waiting for someone else to speak first. But no one did. And that silence lasted long enough for the lawyer to realize something was wrong. The lawyer notices something. The lawyer adjusted his glasses and looked down at the document again. Then he looked at my mother. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "that statement doesn't match the legal record in front of me." You could feel the tension shift. My sister Melissa leaned forward. "What record?" she asked. The lawyer tapped the page. "This estate document references a legally registered adoption." That word hit the room like a dropped glass. Adoption. My mother immediately shook her head. "That child isn't blood," she said. But the lawyer didn't react emotionally. He simply turned another page. "Well," he said calmly, "legally speaking, blood is irrelevant in this case." Escalating curiosity. That's when people in the room started looking at each other, because none of them knew what he meant. And honestly, neither did I. The lawyer continued reading. He explained that my parents had updated their estate plan 6 months earlier. But what confused him was the clause he was now staring at. He read it out loud. "In the event of my passing, the estate shall be divided equally among my children and their legally recognized descendants." Then he paused and pointed at the page. "Your grandson, Noah Stone, is listed here as a recognized descendant." Now my father finally spoke. He leaned forward slowly. "Wait, what?" The lawyer looked confused. "Sir, this clause was notarized and filed with your signatures." My mother suddenly looked nervous, because the lawyer wasn't done. Cliffhanger. He flipped to another page in the document, and when he read the next line, he stopped again. This time, he looked directly at me. Then he said something that made the entire room turn toward my parents. According to this record, your parents approved Noah's legal status themselves. And suddenly, the question everyone had became unavoidable. If my parents signed the paperwork recognizing Noah, why was my mother now claiming he wasn't family? But the real answer wasn't in the room. It was buried in a document the lawyer hadn't read yet. The room wasn't loud anymore. It was tense, because now everyone was staring at the same thing. The document. And the lawyer slowly turned the page that none of us had seen before. The hidden clause. He cleared his throat. There appears to be an additional statement attached to this filing. He read quietly for a moment. Then his eyebrows lifted slightly. Interesting. My sister Melissa leaned closer. What does it say? The lawyer looked up. This clause was added the same day the adoption paperwork was filed. My mother's face suddenly tightened. But the lawyer continued. In the event that any descendant's legal status is challenged publicly, the estate distribution will immediately trigger an automatic review. Nobody understood what that meant until he read the final line. Emotional spike. During that review, all family assets are temporarily frozen. My Uncle David sat up. Frozen. The lawyer nodded. Yes, property transfers, trust payouts, inheritance distributions, everything. Now my father looked worried. Because the Stone family estate wasn't small. There were 2 houses, investment accounts, and the family business. The lawyer closed the folder halfway. Unfortunately, he said calmly, a public challenge was just made. Then he glanced at my mother. You made it yourself. The room realizes the problem. Suddenly, the room understood the situation. My mother had tried to deny Noah publicly, but the estate clause treated that denial as a legal dispute, which meant the entire inheritance process had just been halted. And the review process could take months, maybe longer. But that wasn't even the most shocking part, because the lawyer hadn't finished reading the clause. Cliffhanger. He reopened the folder, turned one more page, then said something that made my sister gasp. Also, the document includes a secondary executor if a dispute is caused by one of the estate holders. Everyone looked around. Who? My uncle asked. The lawyer looked straight at me and said the last thing my mother expected to hear that day. Roosevelt Stone. Payoff. The moment the lawyer said my name, my mother's face went white. Because suddenly, the entire situation had flipped. She had tried to erase my son from the family. But instead, she had triggered the very clause that gave me control of the estate review. The lawyer explained it clearly. Until the dispute is resolved, he said, the secondary executor oversees the investigation. That meant me. And the first step of that investigation was simple. Confirm Noah's legal status, which the adoption records had already done. Circle back to opening hook. Remember the moment my mother said, "You're not my real grandchild." That single sentence did something she didn't expect. It activated the clause designed to protect legally recognized family members. The very rule my parents had signed months earlier. Irony. And the result. Instead of removing my son from the inheritance, she legally confirmed his place in it. The lawyer closed his briefcase and stood up. This review will take several weeks, he said. But the documentation is very clear. Then he looked at Noah and smiled gently. Legally speaking, he said, you belong here. Noah squeezed my hand and quietly whispered something I'll never forget. Dad, did I do something wrong? I knelt down beside him. No, I told him. You didn't. But the lesson that day wasn't just about family. It was about something deeper. Reflection/call to action. Sometimes the truth isn't revealed during arguments. Sometimes it's revealed in paperwork. And sometimes, the person trying to push someone out ends up proving they belong. So let me ask you something. What would you do if someone tried to erase your child from your family? Because in our case, the documents told a very different story.